Hello and welcome to the Dash News podcast. This is episode 120. I am Mark Mason and I'm joined by my fellow co-host and amigo, Joel Valenzuela. How's it going?
I'm doing fantastic, although I would like the Dash price to match the Dash News podcast episode number. Keep on cranking out those episodes. Eventually, they're going to sync up.
Yeah, man, it's been a busy week, not just for Dash, but in crypto in general. And you've been a busy bunny as well, because you've been on a few video interviews. You had your debate last night, which I caught up with this morning, watching the highlights on that on Speed 2 on YouTube.
Yeah, it was a fun one. I got talk smack about Charlie Lee, which is my favorite pastime, and as a result, I managed to get invited to some show with some Litecoin fans and just kind of talk about Dash versus Litecoin. And I didn't realize until then that they have their own shirts and clothes and such. So that's something very valuable I learned.
Yeah, man. There's actually some really big news that came out today. I just saw a Cointelegraph article saying that the Bakkt warehouse has launched deposits and withdrawals today. But I believe it's the planned rollout is for September 23rd, as already put out there into the ether. So the first physical BTC futures are on the way. And I feel like the whole crypto sphere has been like just waiting for this back thing to happen. It's been pushed back so many times and now it's finally happening. Do you think the market is going to react well to this? Because it's like, we always saying like we don't understand why people are waiting for validation from institutional money, right, before they can get in. I mean, that defeats the purpose of what we're doing, right? So let's wait for Wall Street to get in. But I mean, how do you think it's actually going to make a difference? Do you feel like it's already been priced into the market?
I think it was already priced in late 2017, to be honest. All this talk about institutions are coming. Oh, it's going to happen. And then the price kind of corrects, but people are still like, they're waiting on the same thing, not something new. I personally, mainstream adoption has to be mainstream. And things like this will be necessary before this becomes more than just some weird cypherpunk money. But I don't think it's going to be the things you can predict. Like, oh, this is going to happen then. The only thing you can kind of predict, I think, is a vague sense of people are going to get their paychecks in this. People are going to be able to pay for their coffee in this. Like stuff like that is, oh, yeah, well, of course, that's what happens when money is used. But I don't think people are going to know about, well, this is what's going to happen. People are going to like, these big firms are going to do this and that. And this is how it's going to. No, you don't. You don't know. Unless you're an insider trader, in which case, shame on you.
So you actually think this is actually a good thing for crypto? You think it's going to help adoption, awareness, and kind of give that validation, perhaps, that if there are people sitting on that fence, if they see that now, I don't want to say the smart money, but you know, that now if they see like the Wall Street,
I might even say the smart money though. Like, honestly, who in their right mind is investing in crypto? And I don't mean that like that. I mean, who in their right mind is investing in crypto to the tune of the way it's being invested now with the current market cap rankings the way they are? Like, as I like to just say, who is planning for their retirement by loading up on Dogecoin? Like, I understand it's fun to dig for Doge and send some around. It's like, it's fun. And oh yeah, I can even buy real things with it. But like, who's like, stocks. So I'm going to advise my client to heavily hedge into Dogecoin. And like, no, that's not happening, right? I think there is. I was talking to a friend of mine who actually is going to be on the crypto panel at the Ficos Fest tomorrow with me, who does investing for a living. He's been doing it for about 7 years, and clients had not lost money a single one of those years. And he basically seems to think that when serious players start moving into the market, it becomes a lot more mainstream. A lot of this kind of dumb hype stuff is just going to shake away. Of course, there's still going to be some things that are overhyped, other things that are underhyped, things like that. But this whole thing where you have things that no one uses that don't do anything, that just, oh, it does, it's, the blockchain of this. It's like the blockchain of dentists. Like, really? And like those kinds of things just won't happen anymore, at least not to that extent. I mean, there will always be the pink slips, right? There'll always be the penny stocks type thing, but people know that they're that. It's not going to be like top 20 market cap, you know?
I just worry about the emotional roller coaster. It seems like the cryptosphere always gets fixated on these particular events. Do you remember? You remember like the Litecoin halvening, and everyone was getting excited about. It's like, oh, we don't want to buy Litecoin because of its utility and all everything else. It's because the Litecoin halved is up, so it's going to be a good thing. And then that didn't really work out as expected. Now with Bakkt, I can't see the average normal Joe Blogs on the street buying futures, right? If you want to acquire Bitcoin, just get the real thing. I know it's physically backed, but I mean, surely it makes sense to become your own bank and get it yourself. I wouldn't recommend to my friends, you know, if I was a Bitcoin evangelist, I wouldn't be like, yeah, you know, you need to go out and get futures in BTC. No, I would be like, hold it. Don't trust verify, right?
Yeah, that's the thing though, is holding is such a nightmare for actually using crypto is such a nightmare for anyone who's not a nerd like us, honestly. Like to think about how do you buy it, right? And then so it sends to a device of yours, like, oh, well, how do I get it? I get it on my phone. It has my private keys on my phone, whatever. I get it on my phone. How do I secure my phone? Do I know anything about security there? Do I have backups? Where are the backups written? How are they stored? How do I understand like OPSEC? Do I take a screenshot of my recovery phrase so I'll remember it later? Like just everyone does. Like it's just a nightmare. And what happens if you lose it? Oh, you just lost all your money because like you had a house fire and your little paper backups got lost and you dropped your phone on the way to try to put out the house fire. Now it's over. And then, your little treasure is all melty. It doesn't work. It's like, oh, now you're just wrecked. You're not backed. You're wrecked. And so part of the thing about some people wanting to have some sort of institutional thing is I'm sure there's going to be a lot more of like, for example, insurance. I'm sure it's not going to be like, oh, sorry, I lost your portion of the Bitcoin because someone hacked into the thing and whoops, someone like, sorry, you don't have it anymore. It's like, nah, it's not on the user, and the user, it needs to be easy to use and easy to back up before we can expect everyone to start holding their own private keys. Now, I always think it's a good idea for everyone to do it anyway. And if you have a friend or a loved one is keeping all their money on Coinbase, just go slap them. Just tell them no. Just educate them. It'll take longer though, and most people won't be prepared for that.
Wowzers. I haven't had a chance to tell you yet. I saw some news today earlier about a huge Bitcoin transaction. Did you see it? It was something like 94,000 Bitcoin that was moved. One sec, I'll bring up the mystery. 94,000 BTC transaction becomes richest non-exchange address. So the amount moved to the recipient's wallet was a massive 94,504 Bitcoin, which just comes over to $1 billion US. That is huge. And I saw this article on Cointelegraph, and they actually show the transactions via BitInfo charts of all places. And it shows that a third of the coins came from the exchange Huobi. So I think it's Huobi Pro, which also Dash is on, by the way.
Yeah.
So like whenever there's these big movements of coins, because something that substantial, you'd think there's some big powers behind it, but yeah, apparently it's not an exchange. So that's a bit weird, isn't it? I mean, that's a colossal amount of money from Bitcoin.
Yeah. Is that backing their backed?
could potentially be. I mean,
or is it just Craig Wright?
I mean, wasn't there like a huge amount moved from Coinbase once of like Litecoin? Was it like
over half the supply? I think
that's just
could have
insane.
been traced to Coinbase. I didn't look into it closely enough to be sure that it was Coinbase, but I heard something towards that effect.
Okay, do you think Bitcoin holders should be concerned about this amount being moved? Because it is a lot of Bitcoin.
I mean, they should notice it. Let me put it that way. How I don't know, billion. Is there a billionaire in the world? Think about it. Like, what about a billion in fiat? I mean, obviously it's not the same. Like, how many billion is Bitcoin worth?
How many? Sorry, how many
Billion US
what was the
dollars,
question?
all of Bitcoin worth.
Oh God, I'll have to go 1 sec. Let me open up CoinMarketCap quick.
Shout out to CoinMarketCap for finally changing their description of Dash. That sounds more like,
Yes, and
what,
for
like what it is.
listing the dashnews.org website on the Dash page as well. Props. Right, currently the market cap is 186 billion.
So that's 185 billion left after this guy moved his stuff.
That's
So,
a lot of wonga, as we would say in
a lot
the
of
UK.
Wongo.
So,
And I just have to say, we got a comment in the live chat about where's Demelza? Is her internet down again? And
she's still locked in the canteen room.
Yes, we slide on scraps under the door once in a while. No, but she will be at the Dash Convention Europe, which is rapidly approaching. If you don't have your tickets today, get them. Arrange traffic, travel to beautiful Zurich, and have a good time there. It's going to be fantastical.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by these big stories. You remember that there was that story within Dash where there was that person that had like what was close to like 1% of the supply at the time, the Israeli guy that got robbed by his roommate or something. Do you remember that story?
Yeah,
That's insane. Like these stories just always take me by a shock because there was that website, arewedecentralizedyet.com, and I always used to go to it because it used to, Dash was listed as the most decentralized, right? So that's why I loved it. Obviously, the masternodes help play a role in that as well, because if you hold a lot of Dash, you're obviously going to split that up into 1,000 Dash for masternodes. But that website doesn't seem to be working anymore, and I can't find another website like that works. And you got the rich address lists on certain things, but it just didn't display it in the same way.
Are we decentralized yet? Is down, and Crypto 51, the 51% attack one. That still says you only need like $3,000 to attack Dash for an hour. That site has had a pull request for months now to change it, post chain locks, and they've done nothing. So don't use that site; it's inaccurate.
Surprise,
I still
surprise.
reserve the right to quote it for other projects if it suits my internet arguments at that moment. But you know how it is.
Right. There was. I want to talk about some things that began on the Dash community. So over yesterday, Amanda B. Johnson released a video about the diff. And in this video, she gave notice that the diff will be submitting a proposal to the network seeking 9% of the treasury budget for the Dash Investment Foundation. And then there was a few interesting things from this video, and I've not really had a chance to discuss it with you yet. But I noticed in the Discord channels, both in the general chat and both in the masternode channels, there's some heavy discussion. Some people seem to really, really love it, and then there's other people that really, really hate it. And it seems like people had this preconceived idea of how they thought the diff would work and function, especially in its inception, right? And now people are not so sure. So I think some people. So there's a few things that are laid out because Amanda gave a link to what was called the Constitution as well. But I must stress before people get too emotionally attached to what's being said, the proposal for the diff is still yet to be submitted to the network to vote upon. But 9% is quite a substantial amount when you consider the Dash Core group at the moment are taking around about 60% of the budget. So if you just round that up to, we'll just say about 70, that only leaves about 30% left for other DFOs and for services to build out, marketing, grassroots teams, merchant adoption, everything else. I mean, so should the question be like, should it be 5%? What is the right percent? What or I don't know. How do you feel? What's your gut reaction to that amount?
My gut reaction is, of course, everything is insanely political these days. And also, I had not fully looked into every ounce of the proposal. I've seen the discussions blow by. I've been too busy doing work to actually like sit down, and it's like my weekend homework is like usually like keeping up what's going on internally. But I would our good buddy Agnew Pickens just posted that it's 23.5% of the discretionary budget, which makes that number sound a lot larger now. I don't know. I have a lot of questions about how it is intended to be used, what are the intended effects, and most importantly, what the decision-making process is like, both literally and practical, both like de facto and de jure. And I would really like to know what are the stopgap methods. So, for example, what happens if you make terrible investment type decisions in proposals previous, and then when you have the investment foundation then wants to make similar decisions, but it's not put to a network vote. It's just you don't have to convince thousands of Masternode holders. You have to just convince a couple of other people who know you, and then you just kind of implement that. It just seems like almost like a subversion of the process if it becomes that way. Of course, I'm not saying it is. I'm just kind of mumbling out loud about how that kind of thing shakes out. But basically, I'd like to know a whole lot more, and especially, it feels like a shiny new toy at this point, and that's a lot of money spent on a shiny new toy when things are supposed to be like, in bad market conditions. I definitely would be much more comfortable pursuing that kind of percentage. Especially about like that Dash core group taking up 60% as a hard stop, and that's plus like another 10% for another like major organization created by Dash core group. That's not trending in the right direction, I don't think. I think that it should come out of that 60%. And if the 60% is not able to be reduced at this time, that's what I understand, I'd kind of wait until they have the liberty to not only, well, first off, it's probably should be more like 70% right now, but they're living lean and putting some things on hold just to stay at that number. Now, once it grows again, and then it's like a comfortable 60%, not a lean 60%. And then it goes to say maybe 50%. Okay, maybe tack another 10% on. But until then, what was that Pawn Stars meme about like, trying to sell my Ferrari for like, 80 grand. Best I can do is 4 grand or whatever. It's like we want 9% of the treasury. Best I could do is 4%. Just now cut it down to like 250 Dash, something like that. Like the rest of us.
But like, there's so many questions because look, this really shouldn't come as so much of a surprise, right? I always anticipated at some point, obviously the diff's going to come to the network and ask for some money to hold in reserves to invest, right? But I personally, for me, I was just expecting, right, as soon as the diff is launched, I just anticipated that investment opportunities would come to the network, to the treasury, to say, hey, I want to submit this, and in return, I'll give equity to the diff in exchange. And that's how I saw things playing out from the get-go. But as we see, there's many different ways for this. But as for the 9%, how would you feel if it was like if the diff wanted to request 9% every budget cycle? Do you think they should be flexible? Do you think they should adjust it to the proposals that are there, or do you think it should be like hardline static? Because obviously the volatility of the Dash price goes up and down, and obviously the things that they'll be investing in are probably going to be denominated in a USD value. So we've got to be realistic and honest here. So
yeah, honestly, I think that kind of like a hard percentage of the budget type thing seems like a kind of a thing that's much more applicable to what happens when there's too much money on the table. And everyone's so well funded, the markets are going crazy. We've had some of those times when there's only been like 40% of the treasury being used. In that case, a 60% diff proposal at that time would have made sense. We're just like, oh, let's just take $6 million worth of Dash right now, whomp, and then just, buy a lot of gold with it, and then, or whatever they want to do with it. But I would be I think that the Dash ecosystem has suffered because of this fantastic treasury system that until very recently has had like limitless potential, and still, let's not forget, it's pretty strong, pretty big. I think that it suffered a little bit too much from blank check point of view, where people just say like, oh yeah, just throw some money at this, throw it at that, make it rain. Dash can afford this, I mean, I don't know if Evan was thinking straight when he said that, but just saying that whole Dash can afford this mentality has been a little bit too much. And like the only groups that get funding, that get just like funding to loosely do stuff, are ones whose mission is very well known, like Dash Force, like the Dash Embassy, like Dash Core Group right now. You know what they're going to do. They're going to crank out the protocol. They're going to do media NPR. They're going to get other integrations, and that's vital services. And then you just fund them so they can keep doing what they're doing. And that's kind of it. There's been a few, I don't believe you should just like pass it to see what's in it. Just, hey, we're going to throw out some extra money and just see what we're going to do with it. Like, trust us, it's going to be good. Like, no, we can't afford, I don't think we can ever afford that kind of thinking, even in the era of plenty. And so that of course makes me think of back in the day, even among some of the better groups, when you're like, oh yay, we have money, let's do a giant marketing proposal. And just like, because we have money to do this, and then just results just didn't materialize from that. I mean, I'm sure that there's something in the details where people could talk about that, but I did not see publicly, it definitely not to the tune of like the investment that was put in. And more importantly, it was the attitude behind putting it in like that produced that sort of waste. And I don't think that's I think it's like a lesson learned type thing. It's not like someone screwed us over. I think we were all sort of like, well, we have money, let's spend it on stuff. And I don't think that's I think that's a lesson to be learned and evolved from. I thought the diff was a learning from that spray and pray mentality, right? I thought that was an evolution past that. And to see it sort of try to go back to that, no, just running budget and then we'll invest in stuff. What I'd like to see is that the diff already has a operating budget for the supervisors and stuff. They can pursue or talk to other integrations or potential investment opportunities or whatever. And once they've identified ones they think are good or not, they should ask for funding for that specific item. Hey, we think we got a plan. We're going to put this much in precious metals, hedge this much in this, and throw a big bunch at this one thing in exchange for equity in the company that they'll integrate. All right, this is our plan. This is what we want to do. If we get the funding, we're going to do it. If we don't get the funding, obviously we can't do it, and that's it. Not just, oh, give us money and yeah, we're good chaps. You liked us, so you voted for us. Well, let's not forget, people voted for diff supervisors as well because there was a diff that got created. And it needed supervisors, and people applied. And of the people that applied, those people got the most votes. But it's not necessarily you guys are trusted with a blank check on just spending 10% of the treasury now. It's not quite like that either. It just, we're still the new stages. Let's not get carried away with that stuff. Anyway, that's my long and epic rant. And if I can shut up the famous Stay Dashy for a while, I know I probably put too much into it, and I should kind of stop for a little bit.
No, I think you raised some good points. I'm generally curious to see how the network is going to react to this. So there was the one thing that they're saying, the Dash price is down now, right? So they want to build up their reserves, which I can understand. The other debatable thing, which I see is kind of rub some people up the wrong way, but some other people like the idea, is that the money that they receive from the treasury, that they're going to split up into thirds. So 1/3 they'll keep in Dash, 1/3 they'll sell for gold, and then another third they'll sell for US dollars. And I'm still not sure how I feel about it, because you're selling Dash, because there's some prominent masternodes in the community that look at the treasury each month, and if all the Dash isn't allocated, it basically gets destroyed, which makes Dash scarce. So they see that Dash being burned technically as an investment. It's a good thing. Oh, okay, that's great for Dash. There's less Dash in supply now, so they see that as a good positive thing. I just envision things happening differently, from inception. The way I would like it is so the network would have more say. So this is just my personal opinion, but in my head, this is how I have thought things would play out. An investment opportunity would come to the network and would create a concept and say, here, look, here's this idea I've got, and in return, I'll give you this much equity. And then the network could have their say. And then the diff could analyze that investment opportunity and see if they deem it fit or not. And if they do, then the diff would submit that investment opportunity to the treasury on their behalf and escrow it. So then they're taking control of the funds and then hold off. So we can then have so the network has as much control as possible and say in those things. Otherwise, it's a bit blind, you know, because although I fully understand why they haven't, there's no reason for them to have an investment manager right now. But if they are going to be just taking money from the treasury to invest how the supervisor to invest how they see fit, and then the network doesn't really get to have a say, I don't know. I should be absolutely clear though. The proposal hasn't been submitted, so there may be more information that we're not privy to yet. So
yeah,
we can only go off the video that we've seen right now. But yeah, of course, asking for 9%, and if they do ask exactly for that 9%, that means one of the current proposals currently funded will need to be defunded, because I think it goes over by like just 1 or 2 dash.
Well, before we talk about that aspect, so the idea was for 2/3 of it to go into precious metals and fiat. So if you think about it, that means every month 6% of the Dash supply is going to dump at the bottom, in addition to whoever else is dumping at the bottom. That does not sound very smart to me. Like, you take 6% of all the new Dash created, in addition to whatever holders buy and sell, and this is probably the bottom of the bear market, right around there. It's pretty, went down to 59, rebounded a little bit, now is down to somewhere around 80. It's like right around that spot where that's not a hedge. You don't need to hedge when you expect like an upswing, when there's an upside to it. It's just you're dumping Dash, suppressing the price further at the lowest point, and acquiring extremely expensive other assets that then when the price goes up, you're going to wish you had all that Dash. It's late 2017 was the time to start hedging into that stuff, not now. Now on to the knock the proposals out type thing. There's 2 common themes here, 2 common arguments, and I kind of see both of them as pretty valid. First off is like the idea that everything that is being proposed needs to be funded. No, it doesn't. Obviously, competition always makes things better, even though there's weeping and gnashing of teeth when people get, close to the wire and stuff. And we've had our own tumultuous proposal cycles ourselves. It does make the whole ecosystem better when you have to kind of justify your existence. Now, on the other hand, when you have a fully funded ecosystem right now, when you're saying, oh, well, so we don't want to waste money anyway just to spend on projects and stuff, which ones would you like? It's like there's a great movie, Amadeus, about Mozart, and at some point he's playing some big performance, and then basically the whole thing was his critics are saying, oh, you need to it's too complicated, it's too many notes. And the way he asked it, the response is, which ones would you have me remove? So it's like, too many proposals, so which ones would you have you remove? Like, if you're saying that this is going to replace superfluous proposals, name them. Which ones? And I don't necessarily think the diff supervisors should be the ones naming that, but someone, when advocating for this, should be like, yes, this is better than the following proposals. This is we need the money to go here more than it's already going to here. And which are those spots? And then you got to do a competition. It's just like, I always like talking to a merchant. Yeah, I should use Dash. Why? I'm already hooked up with the payment processor. No, just use Dash. Who cares if fiat gets pushed out? Well, no, you have someone there already. You got to say, this is better than that. And we should be able to comfortably say that.
Yeah, it's just the treasury's in a healthy state, okay? But even right now, just with the proposals that have been funded that have come into the most recent cycle, a large even coming into this new cycle, which I think we have about 20 days left voting, there was only like 500 and something dash up for availability, which would practically, it comes to just under 9%. So we're not even factoring any other proposals that may be submitted this month. So that's why it becomes a bit of a Thunderdome, because then people have to vote tactically. Because then if they think, oh well, we want the diff to do it, and I from the diff supervisor's point of view, I can understand why they may want to build up reserves, because even taking this tactic by taking a few percentage, it's going to take them a while to build up a kind of treasure chest, right, before they can really go to some big top players to invest in. I just foresaw things differently, because I saw a few different projects that shared their interest in the diff and wanted to offer equity. So I just assumed that these people would like jump in first as soon as it's there. So this kind of, I mean, for all we know, wouldn't it be really interesting if this proposal goes up for 9% of the treasury, and then at the same time, a few proposals will go up from investment opportunity seeking equity from the diff? Then what would the network do?
Yes.
I mean, it's exciting times, right? It's never a dull day in Dash. I generally don't know what would happen.
So, of course, the idea of like saving up so you have a big chunk later on is, of course, great. Now, the idea, though, the thing to think about is, if all of your money goes to your paying your rent, and then paying your car payment and your gas, and then your food, and then your bills, your other stuff, if pretty much you have just, say, $500 left over at the end of the month after that. If you decide you're going to save $1,000 every single month, and it's like, well, then discretionary things might not be paid, or, who cares because it's all frivolous. Yeah, but what happens when you start neglecting maintenance on your vehicle? And then your vehicle breaks down and you can no longer go to work. And then now you have no money to save. It's like you have to make sure you're not just like, oh, the arbitrary number, we're going to like sock this away. And I'm saying that works, provided you're willing to name the expenses that are frivolous. Like, oh my, how can I get through the week without my drinking budget? Which is a fair question. But if you can just say, you know what, that can go away. I can, or I can cut my drinking budget in half by just, I can't do this job without drinking something, but I can cut it in half by just like buying in bulk, buying at home, buying proper 12 instead of like the fancy bourbon or whatever. And then you can still make room for that. But again, I'd like to see that announced, and that specifically identified what we're saving on to start throwing money behind the diff. And I'd also, I don't know, 10% out the gate before there's some initial record, like proof of record that this is a viable organization. Seems a little steep. What I'd like to see is half as much, like they say a 4% maybe at most, and more importantly, some other proposals submit through the diff to do equity. And then once you get a couple of those taken care of, now it's like, all right, now we got a proven track record. This is good. Now we start thinking more about trusting with a little bit more money. It is a little weird that you just come out the gate and like just demand an arbitrary percentage, which, as far as we know, we have never done that. Dash Force has definitely never done that kind of a thing. We've never just said we deserve this much of the treasury because you trust us. We do good work, even despite 2.5 or whatever long it's been years of doing good work. It's always been, we need this to do the work that we do. You value the work before you sold you on the end result, and there we go.
Yeah, I mean, we always try to make an effort to stay lean, and other prominent DFOs, we always try to make sure when we're submitting a new proposal that there's ample room, for everyone, and try to adjust to that. But I honestly still don't know how I feel, because if they do submit a 9% ask from the treasury every single month, and with 1/3 being converted to USD and 1/3, being sold to gold, So that means every treasury cycle, 6% of our treasury, we're going to get downward pressure, selling movement. So new Dash created, 6% selling, downward selling pressure every budget cycle. When you say it like that, it's kind of scary, but I can understand from the DIF's point of view that they want to preserve and they want to have that stability mechanism to preserve. So I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know, because I personally feel we're at the bottom of the market, and I feel we've got so much to look forward to. I'm not selling into the Bitcoin halving coming up in 2020 May, but that's what the market's going to get into. Who knows what's going to happen after Bakkt? That may open up other doors and floodgates. So
yeah, it seems like one of those. It seems like ill-advised. It's like a risky maneuver when you're not doing the best. It kind of reminds me of like what happens if you're losing a fight and then you just try some kind of spinning move. Oh, I'm gonna spin, and then you fall on your ass, and then your opponent just smashes the canvas with the elbows. It's like, yeah, maybe when you're like doing really well, you might want to do a risky move. But it could be like that one thing that's like the nail in the coffin. That's like, upward volatility is needed, not downward. And so I definitely like to see that. Like, you can't just like for example, if you have Dash invest in other things, you must believe more in the long-term viability of those things than of Dash in order to consider that to have a net positive effect on the price. Now, if that's what you're going for, then it sounds like a terrible idea, at least at this stage. Now, if you're going for a hedge against volatility, you sell Dash at the height, you trade Dash for these other assets, which suppresses the price. It doesn't go as high as you might think. And then you buy Dash with it during crashes, and then it pops it up. So you're actually suppressing the price a little bit, but then you're boosting it on these levels. And so you keep it more in a tight channel, and then it becomes more stable and therefore more useful for commerce and things like that. But I don't think that Dash needs price suppression at this exact point. I think that the idea is you don't buy high, sell low. You buy low, sell high.
Yeah, and we also need to factor in that with the gold part, which is kind of cool in some ways, because that may open us up to a whole new demographic and audience of precious metals people that haven't really delved into the cryptocurrency world as of yet, sitting on the fence. But this may help them see a whole different avenue and actually help us get traction and awareness for the diff. But one thing we do need to consider is that I would imagine that third of gold will be allocated gold, which means there'll be storage fees and things associated with it. And if it's done over the long term when they're building up reserves, if they're going to sit on it for 6 months or a year, there are costs that are going to eat into it as well. So we need to really think about this. And like I said, I can't wait for the proposal to go up, because I know it's going to be a big debate. But having that big debate and having loads of voices shows that people really care, and having the community put in their opinions and how they feel about things is in some ways quite refreshing, because it's at these pivotal moments where this is something new. And as you said, it is like a new toy, and everyone seems to have had their idea of their expectations, what things were going to be. And this is our chance to shape it and have our voices heard. So,
well, you know what else? That's one of those things about why I don't like dictatorial type solutions, like authoritarian solutions. And I also don't like democratic solutions, purely democratic solutions, where there's a binary yes or no. And if 49% wants it and 51% does not like it, then the people that want it get screwed. It just turns into that binary thing. I'd rather like a consensus-based kind of a thing, where if you really like something, then you need to get everyone to agree on it. And so a bunch of times it's like everyone wants what? And then there's 50 things that everyone just gets to talk about and want. And when you have just like the top 10 that like most people can agree on, those are the ones you act on first. And the one thing people seem to be saying with the diff is we need this as a mechanism for projects that we give grants to provide equity. So it's an investment in those projects rather than just throwing money at them. And that seems, I don't think anyone disagrees with that. You'd be hard pressed to find. So that's the most important thing for the DIF to do, is to serve as a vehicle for Dash to retain a piece of things it invests in. So for example, do you remember the big Huobi integration and airdrop and all that kind of stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, what did Dash get out of it? For the money? Vagaries, but is Huobi doing well as a business? I mean, I don't know, but if it is, wouldn't it be nice to have a sweet chunk of that, you know? How about BitGo? Things are using BitGo. Yep, just paid them for the integration. All right, well. But now, what if you had a piece of that? What if you had a piece of Max Kaiser's net worth? I mean, just think about it. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Well, we know he's a bit of a gold fan as well, right? So
yes, own Max Kaiser's. Dash owns Max Kaiser's gold. That's like a weird thing to think about.
Okay. Well, perhaps we should wait for the diff. I did invite Amanda to come on the podcast last week, but she ghosted me. So hopefully at some point, once the proposal's out, we can get someone from diff on, and we can discuss this further, and hopefully get some questions from the community, because we want to know what you guys think, and guys and girls think. Sorry, and
guys,
then
girls, other kin, whatever.
But perhaps we should move on to something else. So, Joel, you did an article at the beginning of the week called "Can Bitcoin Survive China Mining Pool Attack Without Chain Locks?" And I thought this was quite a fascinating article. No, I mean, like, because the one thing that I thought after reading it, just about the sheer amount of mining pool power that China still has, which I knew it was an issue like a year or two ago. I didn't realize that they still had that same amount of dominance. And the really interesting thing for me is when you look at the coin market cap, Bitcoin's got like over 70% dominance, and China has got that level of dominance on mining pools as well, which is kind of strange when you think about it. I'm not saying they're correlated, but I think it's important people know this stuff, because I think it goes over a lot of people's heads.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that when people have an extremely childish view of cryptocurrencies for the most part, even people in the industry. Like, you have like haters like Peter Schiff. It's all a fugazi. It's it's a woozy. It's a wazi. It's not real. Like, China's just gonna ban it. US gonna ban it. That'll be it. And then there's other people like, you can't ban it. It's decentralized, man. And then it's like, there's a lot of nuance the further levels you go into. And so I like to think of there's two different levels of, when talking about decentralization, there's two different levels. Decentralization is like it's thrown about like this democratic term, like it's a virtue signal word, unfortunately, because I think it really has an important thing, which is decentralization just means harder to take out, right? By attacking one of the parties. That's all. That's literally all it means. It's just running other than that. It's more decentralized. Well, as long as it's secure, decentralized enough to be secure. So proof of work coins, such as Bitcoin, work on hash rate, mining hash power. And so the level most people think about is this decentralized / secure, is first off, how much hash power is there? I.e., how expensive is it to control most of the network? And then how diversified is the hash power? How many different and known single entities control 51% of the hash power? And when you look at those kinds of statistics, something like Bitcoin looks pretty good. It's like, well, there's significant hash rate. It'd be expensive to get all that stuff. If one or two pools goes rogue, it still can't quite take over the network. It's like, all right, yeah, you're all right. That works. And same thing with like Dash arguments. People have been talking about Dash hash rate distribution for a long time. And then when chain locks came around, now you have that second layer of, now you actually have to buy Dash in order to compromise the network. You have to control like the majority of the master nodes, as well as, the circulating supply of the coin, and you have to control the hash power. But as it turns out, there's another level, a more surface level to that security equation, which, I mean, that's like if you have your hash rate compromised and you have, say, the masternode network compromised, you're kind of screwed. That's it. Like, it's not like, oh shit, someone pulled something off on us. Oh, we'll recover. It's like, no, someone destroyed your project. It's over. It's game over, man. So, but there's a less serious but still a possible attack that's just so much easier to do, depending on what you call easy. Is what I like to call the infrastructure attack, or the jurisdictional attack in this case, where, for example, say you have 4 major mining pools. None of them like each other. None of them will ever collaborate. And so you're never going to have 4 major mining pools are required to have 51% of the hash rate. They're never going to get together and just like compromise a coin together on their own. But if they're all in a specific country, i.e. China, which has about 75% of Bitcoin's hash rate last time I checked, then if they're known providers, which they tend to be in this case, the government officials can go to those pools and just say, cause shenanigans, whatever, reverse transactions, do this, do that, or just like start sending all Bitcoins into burn addresses, just start destroying the whole thing if they wanted to, which, I don't think China wants to right now, but they do kind of want to prevent capital flight. They do kind of want, there's a bunch of possible motivations. And of course, what happens, are all of the mining machines in China themselves? No, not necessarily. They're all pointed at those pools though. And what happens when you start disrupting that? How long is it going to take for every single person who just has their little stuff in their shed up in the Alps or something, just running away in the shed, is going to run to that and just like somehow get the news that like China's using their hash power. The Chinese government, for example, is using their hash power to attack them. They got to run and like figure out how to point it at a different pool, and like it's going to be disruptive, at least in the short term. So from analyzing that, first off, I found that something like under half, I believe, or just about half of Dash's hash rate is China based. So it's a little bit harder to get that attack. And it's especially if someone's like, oh, the Chinese government has compromised all Dash mining pools. It'll be easy enough for someone to just start throwing hash rate into, just boot up some emergency miners and just like tip the scales and keep that okay. But then there's also the master network, which you have to disrupt as well. Now, in order to disrupt both, the actual cost of just disrupting, as opposed to just controlling the network, conquering and destroying the network, just kind of like disrupting it momentarily, still causing havoc, still taking it down, you'd have to compromise the masternode. So you don't have to buy 1,000 units of Dash to take down a masternode for a brief period of time, because all you have to do is disrupt wherever it's hosted. So, for example, in times of, there have been DDoS attacks on the masternode network in the past, which took down some of the ones who were more poorly hosted. There have been there had stress tests and other surges of transaction activity and other things that have also caused some masternodes temporarily go down. That's why they're paid to provide, with a proof of service mechanism. They're paid to provide a good, stable infrastructure, so that's a little bit less risky these days. However, what happens if, say, Amazon AWS or something like that, however masters are hosted, some authorities decide to go and just take those down because they want to disrupt the ability to chain lock blocks to do a conjunction attack with a 51% mining attack? Well, first off, to be able to disrupt those miners, you'd have to have China collude with some other country. All right. I mean, that makes it more complicated, but it's not super far-fetched. But then the majority of masternodes, from what I've been able to tell from Blockchair's information, although there might be more, is the majority of the Dash Dash masternodes are hosted in Europe, in Western Europe, mainly like Netherlands, Germany, some, France, some places like that, and then North America, i.e. US and Canada. So in order to disrupt the entire Dash network and cause actual problems, you'd have to have collusion between several Western European countries and the US and China. And there's a little bit of like, they're not exactly all known for like working the closest. There's a little bit of tension and animosity sometimes, particularly between China and the others. So it just becomes more difficult to mount some kind of a thing. Now, if it was sort of like the world governments against Dash type of a thing, that would be a lot easier. If it's just like they all decide it's a clear and present danger to their very existence, they need to crush it. Yeah, but that's very unlikely. Now, the other thing to point out, though, is if you're on top of your game as a masternode operator and your node gets taken down, you could switch. Just so the disruption would have to be like very carefully planned. It would have to be well coordinated, and it just is a lot more likely on something like Bitcoin. And that's the funny thing is with security models, it's like you say, oh, decentralization, but you have one avenue that controls the network. And it's like, oh yeah, but it's decentralized. Well, it's decentralized by relying on one single avenue, which just naturally by the free market tends to, because, energy costs and manufacturing and the desire to, and, trading restrictions, the desire to acquire crypto for capital flight reasons just tends to put it all over there in China. Now that's not a decentralized network anymore to the same extent, even though it kind of is. You want layers so that you can't just go attack one thing and just disrupt the whole thing. So read the article. I think it's a good one, but more importantly, start thinking about the implications of that, because it can mean a lot.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about Bitcoin, there was also some other big news this week. Bitcoin.com launched a new exchange, and with that included some Dash trade-in pairs as well. I think this is really good news, and it was widely reported as well, which is always a good thing for Dash as well, because Dash was included in the Bitcoin.com coverage as well. But you want to know what I really want to see? Why can't we have our own exchange, like subdomain? People going, we funnel traffic to the Dash.org website. Why can't we have like a subdomain that has a crypto exchange, crypto to crypto exchange, and also to buy? That's what the diff should be doing. That's what we should be doing, because if we're getting traffic there, we don't want to send them off to other locations. If people are interested, they should be able to take action, right? Call to action, take action, and even if they got crypto, they can switch up their crypto to, and maybe we could benefit from that, because then they don't even have to even switch their crypto to Dash. They could switch their Bitcoin to Ethereum to Litecoin, etc., and we would still get a kickback from that. So I would like to see this.
Well, here's the thing. When you're talking about, so Bitcoin.com has nothing to do with Bitcoin itself. And let me preface that by saying, because Bitcoin is a decentralized, by infrastructure, it's a decentralized system. And so Bitcoin can't own the exchange. It can't just, it's some guy, it's like Roger Ver, and which, by the way, he confirmed today again on Reddit that he is a Dash masternode holder and he does love Dash. So that's great. But anyway, him and his company own an exchange. They branded Bitcoin.com, the Bitcoin.com exchange. That's as simple as it is. It makes it neat, but it's not like, now Dash.org is representative of the Dash decentralized autonomous organization. And as such, we have to be much more careful putting actual exchanges like on the site. And I think that would be complicate a lot of things. In fact,
if it's
Chuck Superman Williams just said Dash Core Group will not get involved in fiat exchange for lots of governmental reasons. Ryan Taylor is adamantly against this.
Well,
all right, that shuts that down. However, I have an idea. What if some aspiring young, or hopefully not so young they don't know what they're doing, some aspiring entrepreneur wants to create an exchange with Dash as the base trading pair, call it Digital Cash X. I even looked it up on Google right now. No one's taken the name. You can do it. Get on that shit right now. Digital Cash X. or some kind of exchange like that. And a lot of this in a portion, can't be all of it, but a portion of the seed funding or a large portion is from diff investment. So it's a Dash base pair exchange that includes a peer-to-peer over-the-counter type exchange thing. And that part can be integrated directly into the Dash wallet alongside Uphold. So you can, just like the Mycelium wallet for Bitcoin, where you can just find peer-to-peer traders near you. And that's a whole separate thing. But anyway, a major, just like a regular old major exchange, the diff can invest in it. And yeah, it just prioritizes Dash and it makes money. And Dash actually owns a bit of that. And there you go. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and just to go back to Chuck's comments saying Dash core group would have, well, it would be a subdomain. So we could have something like get.dash.org or something along those lines, just like how we've got eGifter on their own subdomain. So there would be a third party front in it, but it would make sense, I agree with Joel, to have diff involved. So we could take something from that and even then essentially integrate that into the wallet as well. We could even give like Dash trading pairs, like reduce the fees and then just have normal fees for everything else. So it makes Dash even more attractive for people visiting the site. So respectfully to Ryan, it's up to the network, not him. So
yeah, well, I would just like to have a fair assessment of all the regulatory risks, and is that going to make Dash classified as a security?
Yeah, of course. Everything would have to be compliant.
Those kind of things.
Yeah, 100%. Everything would have to be above board, and it wouldn't be Dash Core Group running the exchange. So from the legal perspective, it should be okay. If it's on a subdomain and it's been run and everything is above board and it's compliant, so all the trading pairs for fiat was compliant, and we had the compliant officers for that, which I'm sure we would have in place. I think that is the way forward. Of course,
we'll see.
If we're a digital currency, we're getting people to go to the website. I can understand if Dash Core Group don't want to get involved with all the legal stuff for whatever reasons. It is probably for good, genuine reasons as well. But at the same time, it doesn't mean we should be scared of our shadow. I mean, like Bitcoin Cash should clearly do it at bitcoin.com, right?
Yeah.
So like, at some stage, it's not about taking risk. It's about what's doing what's right. You've got a website about digital currency that you can't acquire on it. So you're telling them to go to third-party exchanges. But the great thing is, if it's owned by the diff, you might be able to offer better rates than those exchanges. So it may actually become an incredibly valuable resource. And the fact that if it is diff-owned, we may be able to utilize the treasury to subsidize certain trades and things to generate traffic and get people to use it. And then from those integrations, whether it's crypto to crypto exchanges or buying Dash with direct fiat trading pairs, we can then integrate them into wallets. We can do all kinds of things. So like, I don't want, obviously I'm very passionate about this. But
so let's tell everyone a story about OXXO, which as fans of the show might know, and fans of Mexico might know, is like a Mexican 7-Eleven type convenience store. They're owned by a brewing company. And so what the brewing company ended up doing is they ended up buying, I can't remember the exact how many of these things they bought and how many of these things they founded themselves, but they own a bottling company as well. So that they brew their beer and then they also bottle it in-house, not necessarily in-house, but from a separate company that's owned by the same company. And then where they sell it at a chain of convenience stores that they also own. So the entire infrastructure thing is owned by the same company, so that the costs associated between those definitely go down, because it's not now a subsidy. You're subsidizing activity that boosts the value of who's giving the subsidy. It's kind of like saying you give an employee discount. You're not subsidizing. It's like, no, you get to pay your employees to do that again, right? You're keeping it all in house. You're keeping that whole, you're taking it out of the profits to incentivize more businesses. All sales are subsidized. If you think about it. Anytime you have a store and anything that just gives a sale on this, that means that they're subsidizing it. But it's not a governmental agency or something like that that's subsidizing an unprofitable business. In this case, it's the entity subsidizing itself, and rather providing promotional discounts in order to increase growth and therefore revenue. And the DAO, after all, is supposed to be a revenue generating entity, in that you're supposed to, Dash is supposed to be useful for everyday people. So the thing is, the Dash decentralized autonomous organization is supposed to grow itself. It's supposed to grow Dash as a payment option, as a currency, develop. And so if it pays for something, that's supposed to increase its net size, its net ability over time. So Dash, by subsidizing something like this, the Dash network would be investing in its future growth. For example, Dash would be investing in itself.
Yeah, and Amanda in her video identified the 3 areas that Diff will be focusing on, which from memory was payments, blockchain, payments, blockchain technology, blockchain in general, and consumer technology. So the exchange is perfect, right? It ticks all the boxes because it helps with the accessibility to Dash, adoption, and also it has a knock-on effect, like because we can do so much with it. But this is just pie in the sky stuff. It's in its infancy. I'm just planting seeds just to say, like, this is what we can do. There's so many different possibilities and avenues. It's ultimately down to the network to decide, and also for investment opportunities as well. So we shouldn't restrict ourselves with limitations. We should be open to everything. So I'm looking very much forward to the diff proposal and the details of it. Hopefully they'll have more information in there that was in the video. And yeah, so this is interesting times because this hasn't been done in blockchain before. This is a first. And even the gold aspect, I think, will help us generate news because really Dash doesn't really get its credit it deserves in the mainstream media and other crypto publications, not as much as I think it deserves anyway, because this is monumental, right? This is kind of a first for blockchain, but I think it's really the first things that we do with the diff that will get people's eyeballs on it. So, and the gold angle might be perhaps a smart move actually to get traction. But
yeah,
because if investment opportunities doesn't know the diff exists, then of course you're not going to be attracting the top talent that you want. So yeah, it works hand in hand.
Now here's another thing. What does Dash really need its own exchange, or can the diff simply invest in Bitcoin.com's exchange and other exchanges in exchange for, but as a condition, and of course in exchange for equity, but as a condition for as part of the deal, in order to secure the deal, they have to not only integrate Dash, but they have to offer more favorable rates than for other things. Kind of like the Uphold integration has, 1.25% fee for Dash, 1.45 for Bitcoin Cash, for example. So you have to negotiate a favorable rate, and you have to enable instant send, and just start investing in existing exchanges. Sometimes, I mean, obviously you can throw money. Oh, Binance, throw money at Binance. It's like, yeah, but Binance is already doing very well. It's like, first off, they don't care for your investment that much, probably. And also, it's not like, you can't always bet on proven winners. You can bet on future winners. So, for example, say you take a Mexican exchange like KuboBit, which is like instrumental to the region. You try to make sure Dash is number one there. All right, let's go throw some money at that one. It's not big yet, but it could challenge Bitso one day. And, it's like things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. And perhaps I didn't communicate it well enough. Yeah, with the subdomain, I was suggesting it would be like a third-party entity. But I think your idea and suggestion about the Bitcoin.com exchange would be interesting. I'm not sure Roger would go along with it, but he was on Reddit earlier and messaged that he is a Dash fan and a masternode operator. And he was talking about the exchange. So you never know. He may actually be open to that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he would be down for the more favorable rates for Dash, considering he's trying to push Bitcoin Cash. as a digital payment solution. But hey,
Yeah,
it's a conversation
and
worth
that's the
having.
thing. He has to have also Bitcoin Cash. Let's call it a Bitcoin Cash exchange, even though it definitely is not. It's much more than that. It's business. It definitely is like their own exchange because there is no DAO, there is no diff to kind of negotiate this sort of thing. It's like play second fiddle to everything, or else just get bribed all the time. It's like, well, why don't we just build our own thing that kind of works the way we want it to, and it still makes a profit, but it just works the way we want it to. So I think that if there was a way that Bitcoin Cash as a whole could invest in a bunch of different exchanges, and by doing so negotiate favorable rates and equity, I mean, they would be doing that probably before trying. It's kind of like we need our own exchange. It's a big undertaking, and it's kind of like like a last resort type thing. It's like you can't do it the proper way, the diff way, so you do it this way.
Yeah, and as exciting as all this sounds, right now with the Dash price and the treasury, especially if the diff comes in 9%, it's going to take a while to build up, because these aren't going to be cheap investments. When you look at these, just even these payment solutions, they're crowdfunding crazy amounts of money. So it's going to take the diff a long time to build up reserves to be able to offer something substantial. So unless it's someone really starting from the get-go and investing, but then again, you really need someone that's street smart and has that venture capitalist that can truly analyze investment opportunities and grade them in the right way in terms of risk management. I just hope the Dash price goes up, because then the world's going to be our oyster. There's nothing that we won't be able to do. But right now we got to play it smart, right? We've got to pick our winners, and we need to work together as a network to achieve this. I think the first real challenge is going to be this whole debate. If the network isn't happy with 9%, what percentage are they going to be happy with? 5%, 4%, or would it be tied to a certain dollar amount as opposed to Dash amount from the strategy? I don't know. It's going to be a heavy debate, and it's really going to define what the diff is able to do and not do. So yeah, exciting times ahead. It's going to be a roller coaster treasury cycle. There's not many new proposals up for voting in this cycle. There are proposals that have carried over into this cycle that are multi-month funded proposals. So yeah, it's going to be crazy. Although the one thing I will say, if they do stick to that 9% exact, then one of those proposals that are currently funded have to be taken off. So considering it's only a couple Dash in it, if they didn't take that 2 Dash off their request, then I think that's a bit.
It's a bit deliberate.
I just don't think it's the Dash way of doing things. Because it just feels not right.
Competitive.
It doesn't feel in the spirit of Dash.
Yes, it feels aggressive. It's not
because they know what's already there. They know what's available, and then they would be requesting more than what's available, knowing that they're going to have to push something else out. So they'll be deliberately taking that action, knowing that's what they're doing. So then they're really competing with other people, but they're not a DFO. They're the diff, and they're meant to be working on behalf of the whole network. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Like I said, this is speculation. The proposal hasn't been submitted yet, but these are just my initial thoughts. So hopefully, and what the chat's going, but there hasn't really been much chat about the diff in the live chat. I thought this was going to be, considering the chat that's been going on in the Discords, both in the Masternode channel and the main channels, it's been pretty lively. People are making their voices heard, and they're very strong and very strongly opinionated on it.
Yes, I just without specifying people saying it, there's a few funny ones, including, "Oh crap, the markets are tanking again." Response, "Oh well, diversify. Honda Accord 2000 for life." Yeah. That's
the thing. I do think we get way too fixated on the dollar amount. That was one of the things when I was watching your debate yesterday with that Litecoin chap. Was it like Johnny Litecoin or something? Is that his name? Yeah, you can't even remember. Okay, right. So like the
I
one
don't know.
thing
It was not. It was, to my defense, it was not made entirely clear.
okay, so
I go by my real name and my full name, and that's it. I'm not like Bitcoin Ben or Decred Donnie or Zcash Xander or something like that, you know?
So the one thing that really grinded my gears a little bit, I was kind of like shouting at my laptop screen, is because they kept talking about real world utility and real world use. And Johnny Litecoin was saying he's like from the payments background and etc. Seems like a nice guy. Seems like sincere. He clearly believes in the project. But like, I think there was a point when they was talking about like the market cap and Litecoin's position where Dash is, and if you forget about the coin market cap, if you focus on the blockchain data, if you look at the active addresses, the number of daily transactions, the median transaction fee, Dash is on par and sometimes over. That's the real world utility, and that's where the real debate is at. Sometimes I feel a coin market cap from a speculation point of view is a fake measurement of success, and you should focus on the blockchain data itself. And yeah, like, so that for me, I was just like, when I was watching it, I was just like, it really got to me. I just wanted to get that out there. But
yeah, it's one of those things where there's the FCAS score or whatever, some kind of like there's like fair coin value, and there's other things like that. There's a lot of different metrics out there now. I think that there's still a lot of discovery going on where people are trying to figure out what makes a crypto project viable. And it's funny because you could definitely say like, oh, this payment system is being used more. Like Visa processing this many transactions. That's a lot. But you can't really like, it's harder to like fake those kinds of things. That's just paying customers. But a decentralized network that anyone can use, anyone can just pump stuff out on the blockchain. There's no identification behind it. It's just like, that stuff is not easy to fake. I mean, that stuff is rather very easy to fake. And so you can't quite use transaction volume. You can kind of glean things. It still could be faked. And then how much value are you moving? I mean, is it just some guy moving his stash back and forth? Is someone doing teeny spam transactions? Or is it like payments that look like payments, like everyday payments? And how do you value that? And then also, well, EOS does so many transactions. Oh, I mean, but are people like buying stuff with it? No, it's a completely different use case. So therefore, you got to look at it differently. It just, I think that this is such a radically new technology that people just do not know how to value it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Edward, Dash.red's in chat. So for those that don't know, Dash.red is back up and running. I've added a widget to dashnewsespanol.com to help drive some traffic. I hope, Edward, if you're still watching and listening, at the end of the month, perhaps we can talk to you and do like an article on Dash News, because that's going to have a big impact on the Dash transactions. So I feel like once we got the first month out the way, I think it'll be really interesting to do, and I think it's definitely worth highlighting. So
yes.
Yeah,
of course, let's hope it survives diff.
Oh god,
back to that thing of that, and I don't want to take a position on this, especially not publicly. I want people thinking though about what are you going to replace, what are you going to kick out. You don't just think, well, blah, 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 and just wait till the last minute. It's like because it's not a binary option. It's not diff or no diff. It's what percentage should they come in at? What fund should they come in at? And in that, if you decide to just like, which one do you want to do, you don't just do that without deciding on the implications. It's kind of like you're saying like, yeah, like, do you want to go out to eat, or you want to eat at home? It's like, I'd rather go out. And you go out and there's like no options. There's only Chipotle's open. It's like, well, you pick Chipotle, you got to do Chipotle or starve. It's like, well, I would have rather eat at home than Chipotle. But now that you just took that option off the table, now I have to do this thing that I didn't want to know. It's like, why don't we look at all our options before making a choice like that? How's about, huh?
Excellent. Right.
Is it a good time to wrap up?
I think we should wrap up. We've covered a lot of topics. We spoke about Bakkt. What else we spoke about? We spoke about, well, very briefly about the mystery 94,000 Bitcoin transaction. Spoke about the diff at length, and the Bitcoin exchange.
Town.
Yeah, and also the China mining pool domination of Bitcoin.
Prepare for total domination.
But if you've enjoyed this or you've had some thoughts, then of course you're always more than welcome to join us, and I will let Joel take us out and explain where you can discuss that with us.
So comment, not just live chat. This live chat's been lit today, but comment on the actual video when it comes out, and share the video as well. Share it, because other people might just in the ecosystem might not know what's going on. They were like, learn a lot from this, or they might just, oh yeah, I saw this diff thing. I wonder what. I don't have friends talking about it, so I don't know. And then now they hear it. Now they get discussions moving. You know, that Gerald is so full of it. I think he's stupid. Like, I can't believe people are this ignorant, and then they get all engaged and get on forum. Like, yeah, do that. And also, don't forget to smash for Dash and give a like on it, and subscribe, because so many people are just like, oh, I forgot. That's this week again. It's like, yeah, it's every week at the same time for 120 weeks straight. But sometimes having that little notification pop up, don't forget to hit the bell. Don't forget to hit the bell. And then you'll actually know when this is going on, which is the same time as always, but some people forget. So do that. And now it's time for the after party, which is, if you thought that this was rambly and possibly ill-informed and contentious, wait till you get in the after party. It's kind of like this, but it's not just the two of us. You get a whole bunch of people in there. I think it's going to be, heavy this time around. A lot of people. And you just get to talk about whatever and anything and share memes and other things like that. So get in on that. The way you do that is, first off, you got to go to the #1 Dash community in the entire flippin' world. There, I said it. Citation needed maybe, but I think so. And that's staydashy.com. Boom. There we go. I snapped right then and it appeared in the live chat. Staydashy.com gets you into the Dash Talk Discord. All the cool stuff happens there. And there is where you start asking, where the after party at? And we'll plug you in.
Excellent. Thank you, Joel. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. This was episode 120. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. I hope to see some of you in the after party. But stay positive, stay humble, but most importantly, stay dashy. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Wow.